All right, I have no idea how many listeners, or rather people watching we have. All right, what I want to show you today is a quick look at Explain 11.10 and a couple of features that I coded for Explain 11.10. And I want to do that by recreating a short IFR flight in Germany. That was part of my European instrument rating prolongation, similar to the FAA instrument rating. The European instrument rating is time limited, and you have to renew it ever so often. With the United States instrument rating, that is fairly easy. All you need to do is you have to log 6 approaches in 6 months, a holding and course tracking, interception and tracking. And if you log all of that, so course tracking, holdings, and instrument approaches, 6 of that within 6 months, then you're IFR current. And if you ever drop out of IFR currency, you can take an instrument rated flight instructor for an instrument proficiency check, IPC, and then you're good for another 6 months. It's a little different with the European instrument rating. I have to do the renewal every year, no matter how many approaches I have flown in that time. So, in order to renew the instrument rating, what we did last week is I flew from Egelsbach, which is my home airport, to Schwäbisch Hall, and we departed Egelsbach on a Zulu flight plan, which means we departed VFR. We flew VFR out here, out of the RMZ, out of the control zone, picked up IFR in the air, switched from visual flight rules to instrument flight rules, and then headed down to Dinkelsbühl, which is a VOR near the Schwäbisch Hall airport. Went into a holding there, flew the ILS approach once into the missed approach. The missed approach leads you back to Dinkelsbühl, and then we changed to the GPS approach, which also starts there. Flew the GPS approach once, did a touch and go, and then flew back to Egelsbach. And I'm going to do the same thing and explain now, hopefully, if everything goes well. But I'm going to throw in an additional curveball, and that is I've set the weather pretty low. As you can see here, we have very, very poor visibility. And I'm going to use that in order to explain something about the European airspace, which is pretty unique. And that is we cannot do IFR in class Golf airspace. So essentially, at an uncontrolled field, you cannot depart IFR. You cannot pick up your IFR clearance on the ground. This is something I do when I fly in the US regularly. If the weather is below minimum at an uncontrolled field, you usually have a phone number where you call up the controlling agency and get your IFR clearance over the phone. Yeah, you call up the approach or center controller that controls the airspace over the uncontrolled field. You call them when you're like 5 minutes before departure. Tell them you're going to be off in 5 minutes, looking for an IFR clearance. Then you get an IFR clearance at a specific time with a specific void time. So before the clearance void time elapses, you have to be off and on your way. And if you miss your void time, you of course have to give them a call again and say, hey, I didn't take off, because otherwise they start search and rescue. So pretty straightforward. That giving the center or approach controller a call and picking up your IFR clearance that way means they block the airspace of that uncontrolled field. So, for example, if someone was approaching that field, he would need to hold it, presumably at the published hold at the initial approach fix until I have taken off and I have left the airspace of that uncontrolled field. Yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. So while you're doing this, you are for a brief moment flying IFR in class Golf airspace. Obviously, if the field is uncontrolled, when you take off, you're either in class G or class E airspace. Until you are at an altitude where the approach controller or center controller can see you and picks you up. This is not possible in Germany. We cannot do that. We cannot do this kind of procedure from an uncontrolled field. So this is a problem that often arises in Egelsbach, which is a very, very, very busy general aviation airport. With all kinds of citations and Learjets and the like taking off. And if the weather is like the weather conditions that I've set here in X-plane, so I've set a pretty low visibility, as you can see. Can barely see over the railroad tracks that are after the runway 26 center line, so you can not really even see the end of the runway 26 here. So when the weather is like this, I mean, how do you take off? You obviously cannot fly VFR to the minimum vectoring altitude and start your IFR flight from there. In fact, people do that. It is, of course, highly illegal to do that, but I see people doing that all the time. So what they do is they get their details from, so they file their IFR flight plan, they get their details from the Egelsbach Flugleiter, so the guy that sits on the tower that is no longer a tower because Egelsbach is an uncontrolled field. So even if there's a building that looks like a tower, that is actually over here. Let's see, can we see that building here in the scenery? Those are the hangars. Yeah, roughly here, I guess. Yeah, so that building used to be the tower, and now Egelsbach is uncontrolled, does no longer have a tower, but still a guy sitting up there doing the job as a Flugleiter. Well, if you want to know what that is, you have to look up the German air law. I'm not going to go into detail here. So what people do is they get their details from the Flugleiter who is talking to the real tower controller in Frankfurt, and so and they know they can expect IFR passing 2,500 feet, which is the minimum vectoring altitude, and people just take off and take off into the clouds. They are technically flying VFR, and they are going through clouds up until 2,500 feet, where they are picked up for IFR flight, and they are supposed to be visual up until 2,500 feet, and they are not. So they are, of course, highly illegally flying a VFR in IMC conditions, but people do that all the time. I guess everybody knows, and because it's because everyone is used to doing uncontrolled ops with picking up IFR in class Golf airspace, which is perfectly normal thing to do in the United States. People do it here as well, but it's illegal. So what I'm going to show you is the legal way to do it, how you can actually take off, get out of here, flying a VFR in Gulf airspace and picking up IFR legally while being below way below the minimum vectoring altitude. And the way to do it correctly and legally is, of course, to use a standard instrument departure of Frankfurt. So this is a chart of Frankfurt and one of the standard instrument departures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly the Dinkelsbühl what is it? 8 Foxtrot. Yeah, the Dinkelspiel 8 Foxtrot standard instrument departure. And the way you do it is, of course, Frankfurt is right north here of Egelsbach. What you do is you request a special VFR clearance, and then you transition into the control zone, into the tower zone of Frankfurt via special VFR, and you can do that while just being clear of clouds and having, I think, 3 kilometers visibility. So you take off VFR here. You turn over the Autobahn, the highway here. At this intersection of highways, this is compulsory reporting point called Lima. At this point, you switch to the Frankfurt Tower controller. You fly along the Autobahn here, VFR. And then, as soon as you see the runway, the 25 left runway of Frankfurt, you essentially make a low approach. So you're essentially in a left base here for runway 25 left. And as soon as you see the runway, you make a low approach as if you were landing there, but you're not actually landing there. You make a go around. And at this point, you are essentially on a go-around from runway 25 left in Frankfurt. You join the standard instrument departure of that runway, and that is a way to get you up from a very low altitude into IFR flight up to the MVA for en route IFR, and then you just fly the standard instrument departure like is shown here. And then you are perfectly legally on your way with an IFR flight plan. All right, so we are going to do that. We are going to take off VFR from Egelsbach, runway 26. Here's I have a better chart for this. So we are right now sitting here on runway 26. We're going to take off here, fly until we can see the Autobahn, turn right, and then essentially follow the Autobahn to the north until we see the runway 25 left. And then we join the standard instrument departure for runway 25 left in Frankfurt, and then fly to the Dinkelspiel VOR via the standard instrument departure, and there we join our ILS approach and maybe even the GPS approach, and fly this approach here in Schwäbisch Hall. All right, so let's do that. As you can see here, I have loaded the 172, the Cessna 172, in X-Plane 1110. It's of course no secret that the other variant of the 172 that we ship with X-Plane 1110 features the new G1000. It's not fully integrated into the 3D model yet, so I'm not going to spend much time here in the virtual cockpit at all. I'm just going to use those pop-up windows right here, and yeah, I'm basically going to show you how to program the flight plan into the G1000, and then fly it using the GFC 700 Autopilot mostly. All right, so for entering your flight plan, you have basically two options. Obviously, there's the flight plan button, same as on the smaller G430, G530, and that brings up the little flight plan window here, and then you can enter waypoints and airports and whatnot. So my flight plan is going to be the Rimki intersection, and then the Dinkelspiel VOR, and then Schwäbisch Hall. So I can enter this here right on the PFD, and of course if I just use mouse scrolling, this becomes a little easier. Don't have to click quite as much. So this is the intersection, accept, and then it becomes part of your flight plan. And next would be Dinkelspiel, but of course I can also use the MFD. So this is the second big screen, and if I pull up the flight plan here, I get a little bit of a bigger window. So again, I can go into cursor mode and start putting in the waypoints. As you can see, I get a little preview map of whatever waypoint I'm entering here, wherever that is. So Delta Kilo Bravo, Dinkelsbühl VOR, insert, and then of course our destination airport, Schwäbisch Hall. Delta Tango Yankee. Okay, so this is going to be our flight plan. Then at some point I will obviously, well, we can already go ahead and enter the approach. So I guess we want to fly the ILS approach there. So I press the PROC, the procedure button, and then I can do several things here. For example, select an approach. And that's what I'm going to do here. So we'll fly ILS 28 approach, and of course we use the Dinkelsbühl VOR as the transition. And so I get the preview here of what this is going to look like. I should actually be able to zoom in. That doesn't work. Okay, I need to fix that. Turn off the minimums for now and just load that into the flight plan. So now we have the approach as part of the flight plan. And now, of course, what I wanted to do is add the standard instrument departure for Frankfurt that we're going to join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that we are already on our way to this this intersection, and we realize we cannot do the minima legally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a new airport before my active waypoint. And as you can see here, whenever I turn the little knob to enter a new waypoint, the highlight field, the one with the inverted background color, this is where the waypoint will be inserted in front. So everything will go one down. Okay, so Frankfurt with its 4 runways, as you can see here, is going to become our pretend departure airport. And now that our flight plan reads Frankfurt to Schwäbisch Hall, I can go in and select an instrument departure in Frankfurt. And as I said, we're going to fly the Dinkelsbühl. Which one was it? I think is it 8 Echo? I don't remember. Yeah, no, that's the wrong way. We want to take off runway 25. So Dinkelsbühl 7 Foxtrot, that looks better. Okay, and we will join runway 25 left, and the transition is of course Dinkelsbühl, and now we can load that, and now it's in here. All right, so we have prepared the flight plan. Over on the primary flight display, you can of course see now, yeah, the HSI is set to take us to runway 25 left, but of course from Frankfurt instead of Egelsbach, we can change that by doing a direct tool later. So what I mainly care for, I just want the bearing pointer to point me where I need to go. So there's our bearing pointer to the threshold of the runway 25 left. And I can close that for a second. The inset map I can declutter a little bit because it's I really don't need all the waypoints here, so it's a little nicer. Okay. All right. So I've set my altitude, and it's preset an altitude of 1,000 feet. Okay, and at this point I'm talking to Egelsbach Info, which is on 118.4. So, well, let's do that like I would do in the, I'm an idiot, it's up here, like in the real plane. So I would be talking to Egelsbach Info on 118.4, and I would preset the Frankfurt Tower on, what is it, 118.07, I think. I'm looking at my notes from my last flight, whether I'm sure I scribbled it down here somewhere, but nope. Anyway, we can look over here. It should say on the zip, doesn't it? Yeah, there you go, 118.77. All right, okay. So put that in standby. There you go. All right, so I'm talking to the Egelsbach Flugleiter, tell them ready for departure runway 26. He will have given me a squawk code that Frankfurt expects me to be in, whatever, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's going to be my squawk. Turn on the transponder. And given me the tower frequency, and expect departure via Lima, compulsory reporting point Lima, and that's what we're going to do. So okay, let's go. Gosh, I hate flying without rudder pedals. Makes controlling the aircraft on the ground so much harder. Okay, here we go. So I'm now just going to basically fly runway heading until I see the Autobahn, and then follow the Autobahn to the north until I see Frankfurt Airport. So I'm doing this right now. If I would do this in real life, I'd be under an SVFR, a special VFR clearance, which means that I have to just stay clear of clouds. I cannot touch any clouds. And at this point, I will have all the airspace to myself. So there's no way another plane is going to be in the same airspace under special VFR at the same time. And of course, it is impossible to... there's the Autobahn. Okay, so this is the Autobahn 5. I'm going to follow that to the north, and to make life a little easier, I will just level off at 1,000 feet here and fly north. And of course, now I lost it. All right, the weather. I set the weather a lot worse than what I should have done. All right, so we have the Autobahn to our left. So I'm now just going to put the thing in autopilot, make it hold the altitude, and sync the heading, and just fly heading mode up here. So as you can see, we will now transition from the RMZ into the control zone of Frankfurt, and the point where we transition, if you look from the outside, there should be an intersection of motorways. Here it is. So this is the A5 and the I have no idea. Well, it's an intersection of Autobahn and it's the compulsory porting point Lima, and at this point I would switch over to the Frankfurt Tower controller, tell the Frankfurt Tower controller I entered his control zone via Lima, and they would instruct me to fly continue visually along the highway and join final for runway 25 left. And of course, if you ever do this in real life, they will need to make a gap in the airplanes, in all the big airliners approaching the runway on the ILS approach. So they need to make a gap big enough for a small Cessna 172, obviously. All right, and of course, as you can see, the bearing pointer, it's extremely helpful. That tells me where the runway threshold is. All right, so, geez, cannot see a thing here. And obviously the runway threshold is going to be to our left now. Let me bring in the heading mode a little bit here, and so I can see it. I can just see a little glimpse of the airport and the runway lights. I don't know if this actually is visible on the video stream, but I can actually see the runway lights here. All right, we're now going to fly runway heading, and at this point I'd say, okay, runway 25 left is in sight, discontinuing approach runway 25 left and joining the Dinkelspiel standard instrument departure. And if I do that here, what I do is I go into the flight plan, I go into the first leg here of the flight plan, and oh, it's already done that automatically, so it's active. I'm going to change from heading mode to GPS mode, and as you can see here, we are now actually on the first leg of the instrument departure from 800 feet. Okay, this leg obviously sequenced because we were already above 800 feet, and now we're just going to this Delta Foxtrot 135 waypoint. And of course, at this point, we would get clear to a higher altitude. So I will just set 4,000 for now. And oops, there we go. And go into a level change mode, apply full power, and go for a cruise climb of 80 knots. So as you can see here, let me bring this, make this a little clearer. So if we zoom in a little bit, you can actually see the layout of Frankfurt Airport here. And we're going to join the standard instrument departure here. And then fly down here towards Franken, and you can see the class Charlie airspace surrounding Frankfurt here, and inside the class Delta airspaces for Wiesbaden Air Base. So as I'm recording the video, I'm physically sitting about here. All right, so as you can see, we sequenced to the next waypoint. You can also see that helpfully on the PFD up here, where it tells you the active leg, the distance. 1,000 to go. And of course I can also zoom in here on the little inset map to better see where I'm going. As you can see, I need a little more of a right rudder. The autopilot is having a little bit of trouble with the lack of right rudder. That's why it flies slightly offset of the course. All right, you have the countdown timer up here, obviously, when you have a turn coming up. And then you can follow those turns quite easily. Okay, I need to look up where rudder trim is. I need rudder trim. I don't even know what that key is. Well, use the search function. How about rudder trim? So it's on 6, 5, 6, and 7. 6 is center, and then okay, that makes sense. All right. Oh, by the way, there's a new Explain 1110 feature down here. You can now make profiles for your keyboard and joystick setup. You can make a profile and bind it to a specific plane or to a specific category. So, for example, you can make a profile that you fly airliners with your yoke and experimental planes and helicopters and gliders with your joystick or something like that, or create a profile for just one specific plane and override certain settings. So that is also new. What are we looking for? Yeah, 5 and 7 for the rudder trim, right? Okay, so let's give it a little bit of rudder trim, and as you can see, it centers the ball here quite nicely, and hopefully the autopilot will catch up after it. Okay, we have another turn coming up, and at this point, let's say we are clear to 7,000, so let's climb to 7,000 feet. So a few things we can do here. We can look at our destination airport, obviously. Learn about the frequencies and the runways. So we have this little grass runway in Schwäbisch Hall and the actual hard runway. One is 2,500 feet, the other one is 5,000 feet long. We can go into the nearest group and look at the nearest airports, nearest intersection, nearest NDB, nearest VOR around us, stuff like that. You can bring up certain things on the map, like the airways. Nextrat, that actually works. So if I make thunderstorms in the weather setting, you will get the appropriate indications here. Not sure it should, no. Okay. Well, that's good. So, and now we are about back where we started from. As you can see here on the map, we are basically passing Egelsbach Airport off our left again. So 1,000 feet to go. Huh. That is silly. Why is it displaying NM here for nautical miles? That's a bug. That's funny. Huh. Okay, that's a bug. Need to fix that. Okay. All right. So we arrive at 7,000 feet, and obviously in Germany we have already passed our standard altitude. So I'm going to change the altimeter to standard baro now. Didn't make much of a difference because we have standard pressure anyway. Let me go into the weather settings and change that a little bit so that we actually get a little bit of a difference here. Okay, now I obviously need to back out a little bit of the rudder trim because we are gaining speed. Alright, let's look at our approach that we want to fly. So obviously we selected the ILS 28 approach, and looking at it, let me bring up the chart instead. Here we go. So for our approach briefing, we'll get the weather on 3387. We can do that as soon as we are close enough, and we'll be talking to some guy on Langen radar until we enter the RMZ here, and then talk to a Flugleiter again. This is what info here means in the frequency. Okay, our approach starts at Dinkelsbühl VOR and 5,000 feet. We are we will keep that in the nav2 radio, I'd say, because we're going to need it for the missed approach. So I'll put that in the nav2 radio, and the ILS obviously in the nav1 radio. And then, of course, European specialty here, we have a standalone DME that is not coupled to the ILS, basically in the center of the airport. And as it says here for the approach, it's DME required. And I'm going to show you how you can do that on a G1000 that has a separate DME. Not many of them do, so if you're used to flying a G1000 in a US airplane and in a United States airplane, you probably don't have this function, but it is very useful to have that in Europe, so I put it in on our simulated G1000. So basically what you see here, I can bring up a separate DME tuning and then set the DME receiver to hold if I want to. So what I'm going to do is let's see if we can do this. Alright, so I need 108.05 on the DME, so I'm going to set 108.05 on the nav receiver for now, which brings it into the DME receiver. Then I'm going to change the DME over to hold mode. Okay, now the DME is in hold. Now I can set a different frequency on the nav1, which is going to be our ILS 111.5. I'm an idiot. here. Okay. And now we have the ILS, which of course we cannot receive yet because we're too far out on the nav1. And at the same time we have the DME receiver on the DME frequency that we want. Okay, so leaving Dinkelsbühl, 5,000 feet is our minimum altitude all the way from the Dinkelsbühl VOR until our glide slope interception. So 214 is the outbound course. We fly that until we have 4 DME from Dinkelsbühl, and we can of course have that on the nav2, and I can just switch over the DME on the nav2 for that, and that's where we can start our turn to intercept the localizer, and then we continue 5,000 feet on the localizer until the glide slope comes in, which should be the case at 12 DME or the Esuva waypoint, and then we just fly our 3 degrees glide slope. Down here you see all those intermediate check altitudes that apply to the localizer DME approach, so as long as we have a proper ILS we don't care for that. The only thing we care for is obviously the middle marker and our decision height. So category A airplane, those categories depend on the stall speed, and a 172 would be A. So our decision altitude is going to be 1495 barometric. I'm going to set that at the minimum, and if we don't see the runway then we'll go missed. Missed approach is climb on runway heading to 4,000, and once we are above 4,000 and have passed the 5.1 DME, we'll make a right turn to intercept the 273 radial back to the Dinkelsbühl VOR, where we enter a holding. And when we actually do that, we'll switch over to the GPS approach just to fly that as well. Okay, so yeah, this is what we're going to do. All of this is already set up. What I want to do is I want to set our minimum. So 1495, right? Barometric. So 1500 is the nearest 10. That was too much scrolling. Whoop. This is, well, that's what you get with an Apple trackpad, obviously. So I'm going to set that at the minimum, and load our approach. And once we've done that, we can of course scroll down here, and so this is our currently active waypoint. And then of course when we cross Dinkelsbühl, I will actually not fly this leg here that takes me to the center of the airport, but I will hit activate approach and fly to this Dinkelsbühl 4 DME point right here. I have no idea why the Autopilot is flying with this much of an offset from where it should be. This is weird. That might be a beta bug. Need to talk to Austin about that. Well, need to investigate why it happens first. And of course I wanted to set our frequency on the nav2. I can show you one of the many ways we can do that. So I'm going to set nav2 active here, and then I'm going into the nearest mode, go to the nearest VOR, and it should, I think, already be in the list of nearest VORs, maybe, kinda, sorta, I don't know. Let's see, Gedern, Taunus, Karlsruhe, Fulda, Luburg, Rammstein, Dinkelsbühl, here we go, this one. And as you can see here, the frequency is 117.8. So what I can do is I can press the soft key for frequency, highlight it, and now of course it's switched. Well, obviously, because the relative position switches. Alright, hit frequency, hit enter, and as you can see it entered it up here. Then I just need to press flip-flop and bloop, here we go. There's our frequency in the VR2, or in the nav2 receiver rather. Alright, let's see if I can pull up the chat here and see what questions people have. Henrik asks, can the pop-up window be placed on another monitor? Yes, obviously it can. It works exactly the same way as the 430, 530, or FMS CDU works in X-Plane 11. So yeah, you can drag the pop-up window to a different monitor. Obviously that works. Henrik also wants to know whether you can change the baro between hectopascals and inches of mercury. The answer is yes, you can. The way it's done, you hit the PFD soft key, then the alt unit soft key, and then you have to switch over between hectopascal and inches. And right now, of course, we are in standard mode, so you can't actually see it. What I can do is I can bring it out of standard mode and then switch it over to hectopascals. Yeah, you can actually do that. And Air Biscuit wants to know whether on the steam gauge G1000 you can switch the temperature to Celsius. I'm pretty sure you can. There's the yeah, this one doesn't even have the the analog clock. So on the clock, there's a button where you can change the display between voltmeter, when it says something like 27E, and E stands for electric. So 27E would be 27 volts, and then you press the button and then it'll say 59F. That's the temperature in Fahrenheit. You press the button again, then it says 15C. That's the Celsius temperature. You press it again, it's back to 26 whatever E. That's the voltmeter. On the G1000, you have the temperature down here, the temperature and the ISO deviation. The clock is over here. And if you need the stopwatch, you press the timer references soft key. And then you have a regular stopwatch, a count up timer, or a countdown timer. well, we will use that in the for the holding maybe. That's when a stopwatch is quite helpful. So what else is here? Of course, I preloaded the minimums for the approach when I actually activated or loaded the approach on the procedure page, and it has the baro minimum on it, and that one will show up on the altitude tape during our descent, making it very obvious when we hit the minimum. So right now we have a slight wind, a little bit of crosswind, a little bit of tailwind. There's actually few options for the wind display that you can have here. If I hit the PFD soft key and then the wind soft key, there's like 3 different options, like the regular wind pointer, 4 knots total wind velocity. Can break it down to 3 knots of tailwind, 3 knots of crosswind, or just show that like this. So whatever you prefer, how you want the wind indicated, you can do that here. DME window, already explained that. Can bring up the bearing pointers here. So yeah, I can actually load our, we actually have the Dinkelspiel VR identified here. I can bring up the bearing pointer. That might be quite helpful. So, and actually I'm pushing the plane quite hard now with the 2,600 RPM. I would not do that in real life. I would probably run it in something more like 2,400 RPM maybe. And of course, a little leaning might actually be in order. At 7,000 feet. Whoops, that was too much. So now you can see various airspaces here, obviously. You can see we left the Class Charlie airspace of Frankfurt. Then can see various either Class D airspaces or RMZs, radio mandatory zones here around those airports. You can see a couple restricted airspaces here, those circles that are usually restricted airspaces. For example, this one here, this is a restricted airspace around the nuclear power plant. That one is the Class D airspace of Mannheim. I'm pretty sure, yeah. That orange thing over here, that is, I'm pretty sure that's a TMZ, transponder mandatory zone. So, very little to see here. Well, that's what IFR training is. Airspace definitions, can they be added like in, yeah, of course. It uses exactly the same file that the 430 and 530 uses. So you just drop in that in the custom data folder. So in custom data airspaces, you can drop in open air files, and it'll it'll load those over the default airspaces, and they show up in the G1000 just like in the smaller units. So right now I have loaded an OpenAir file for Germany that has all those airspaces, and they show up on the small GPSs as well. So now we passed Echo Whiskey, that's the Walldürn airport. Golf Uniform, I don't even know what that is, but we can find out. If I just press the nearest soft key, it gives me information about the nearest airports here. Fox Uniform is Main-Bullau, I'm quite sure. Golf Uniform, I don't know. If I wanted to go there for a deviation, I can. So I highlight one on the nearest, and then I press the direct button, and then it will give me the information to do a direct to Unterschlupf. I have never been there. I don't know what that airport is. Okay, but I don't actually want to do that, so I back out with a clear button. So another 36 miles to go to Dinkelsbühl, and when we get there I can activate the approach. I can do that, of course, on the PFD and the MFD interchangeably. Gosh, now I have the sun right. That is silly. Now I can hardly see my screen because of the sun. Okay, that's better. Someone asks whether this supports LPV approaches. The answer is obviously it does, because you can even fly LPV approaches right now with X-Plane 1105. The 430 and the 530R was capable and display LPV approaches, and obviously the G1000 uses the same technology as the small GPSs, and so it obviously can do that as well. Okay, we're going to fly over the RMZ of Niederstetten, which is also a good airport for IFR training, but there's currently some construction going on there. I actually wanted to go there last weekend for my IFR prolongation, and it was no temp closed, so we couldn't go there. So we're instead going down to Schwäbisch Hall here. This airport is surprisingly large, actually, because it is the home airport of the Wirth company, the one that is, I think the world's biggest supplier of screws and all kinds of fasteners. So this is a very, very big company, and they have a couple of business jets there. I don't know what kind, whether it's Citations or Learjets or whatnot, and so they got a fairly long asphalt runway there, an ILS approach, 2 GPS approaches, so that the airport is usable in low visibility. Yeah. Another question, can you load airways from waypoints from the flight plan screen? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If I wanted to go from Dinkelsbühl somewhere else, I can actually show this right here. So if I wanted to go from Dinkelsbühl to somewhere else, I can place the cursor one beyond this VOR, and then I can press the menu key and go into Load Airway, and then press Enter, and then I get the airway preview right here. And then I get a list of all the airways that radiate out from Dinkelsbühl. So here you can see the airways that go out from there. So for example, if I load this lower airway here, then it gives me a list of the waypoints from there. And then I can just follow the airway here all the way into, that's probably somewhere in Eastern Germany already. Yeah, I can step along the airway here. That one goes down to Switzerland, and then, yep, apparently this airway goes from somewhere in Switzerland to somewhere in Eastern Germany. And yeah, I can step along the airway, select a few waypoints, and then it gives me a preview here of all the waypoints on the airway. And if I pressed enter now, it would load it into the flight plan. I'm not going to do that because I want to fly the approach there, so I back out with the clear button. No, I don't want to clear it. And this way I could have entered an airway here if I wanted to. So yes, that is possible. That's not what I wanted. Yeah. Oh, the fog is so dense you cannot even see the ground right under you. Well, it better be. By the way, the demo is running right now on the slowest and oldest computer that I have. I've turned the details way down to get my 30 FIPS. So this is a 5-year-old Mac laptop, 2012. Yeah, it's 5 years old. Oh my god. Who knew? With a 1 gigabyte graphics card. So I think this is the oldest computer that I have. And the reason I'm streaming from this machine right now is that I currently have a problem that the map doesn't work right on Windows computers. So I couldn't stream from my Windows quote-unquote gaming machine right now because the map doesn't work properly. We obviously have to fix that before we go beta with 11.10. But I'm pretty optimistic that Ben and Sydney will help me fix that, and we can go public beta very soon, as soon as the map is fixed on Windows. So right now it only works on Mac, and that's why I have to use my slowest and oldest computer actually for the stream right now. Well, we can talk a little bit about the less obvious features that we can see here. So for example, the radio that I have selected active that I'm talking on here is the one that gets green color. And if I were to switch my primary navigation source to one of the radios, then that would turn green also. By the way, we can do that. We could navigate to Dinkelsbühl now not using the GPS but using green needles. So in order to do that, I will switch the autopilot into heading mode for now. What the hell? Can't you just fly straight? Okay. Something is wrong with the autopilot right now. I haven't merged from Austin recently. And that's interesting. It seems to want to fly a track instead of the heading. Wow, that is so weird. Okay. Well, that explains why we're having trouble with the GPS track as well. Okay. Alright, so I press the CDI soft key, that gives me the green needles, and now I can use the course button right here to change the radial. And now if I turn the autopilot into VOR mode, it should be able to follow that radial if the autopilot was working correctly, which I think right now it doesn't. But as you can see here, when I change my primary navigation source, it also changes the color of the active radio right here. Alright, this is not working great. I switch back to GPS mode and follow the GPS instead. Vision Byte asked whether the timer works. Yes, it does. You can bring up the timer window here and either start an up count, or I could set myself up for a countdown. I'm not actually sure how this works, so something like that. If I want to do a 30-second downtown start, then it starts the stopwatch. One way I use that countdown feature in real life is when I land. When I used to land 428 X-ray, Austin's old aircraft, which was turbocharged, I would just turn on the timer as soon as I taxied off the runway. So I would have a time, the minutes that the engine has run in idle, and now of course it's counting up because it's counted to 0. We can instead change that, of course, into a count up and go start here, and now it'll instead count up. So yeah, it's quite helpful if you're flying a turbocharged aircraft, and then after touchdown with the engine in idle, you just let the timer run up while you taxi onto the ramp and shut down at your parking position, and before you actually shut down the engine, you take a look at the timer. If it's run up to something like 3-4 minutes, then it's probably a good idea to run the engine in idle for maybe a minute or two longer, so you get like a 5-minute idle time on the engine to cool down the turbo before you actually shut it down, just to keep the oil flowing through the turbo with the engine at idle for a while after landing. So this is commonly what I use the timer for. Just start it when I taxi off the runway, glance at it before I turn the engine off. All right, and at this point, ATC would probably clear us down to 5,000 feet. So I'm going to preload the 5,000 feet here, go into vertical speed mode, and give me a nice smooth descent. Bring down the RPM a little bit, obviously. So, and as you can see here, nearing the airport, we have now successfully, we are picking up the ILS signal. It's already identified here. We are picking up our DME, which is separate. I could bring up the what I call the fake DME here. So this one is a GPS calculated 2D range to the waypoint as it is saved in the database. You can use that as a DME substitute when flying IFR under FAA rules. You can't do that in Europe, at least not yet. So that is why we have this this additional DME radio head here. Again, this is an option you will probably never run across on a G1000 in the United States, but it's quite common here in Europe to have this additional remote tune DME hooked up to the G1000 as well. All right, and as we cross the VOR here, I will go ahead and actually activate our approach, and so bring up the right chart here. Dinkelspiel 214 outbound until 4 DME, then right turn, intercept localizer, 5,000 intercept glide slope down to 1,500 decision altitude. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to see the needle swing over here. So what I do, I go into procedure and I say activate approach, and that should set our leg from Dinkelspiel to Dinkelspiel 4 active. I'm not quite sure whether this shouldn't be a course to fixed leg. I'm not 100% sure how this is encoded. Now, of course, we're getting too slow. I need to bring up the engine a little bit and maybe also bring in the mixture again since we descended a little bit. So let me bring up the mixture again just a bit. Alright, so we're going to want to see 4 DME here. Alright, what I'm going to do is I will bring the autopilot into roll mode. Bring the autopilot into roll mode and change my navigation source over to localizer. And I think the real one at this point should have preset the course. Not sure why it didn't do that. It's maybe a bug, or maybe I just forgot to code that. So yeah, I have to look into this, obviously. All right, and as you can see here, we are about to pass our Dinkelspiel 4 DME waypoint, and that means our localizer is going to come in very soon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arm the approach mode. As you can see, localizer is arm in white font, glide slope is arm, and localizer comes in. As you can see, it just turned active, and the autopilot should intercept it now. Yep, looks like it's doing that. All right. Can bring over here. So what we're looking now is for the 12 DME where the glide slope will come in. So right now we are at 14.9. When this reads 12, the glide slope will be in the middle, hopefully. Vision Byte asks what other aircraft will have the G1000 in them. Well, obviously the ones that we ship with X-Plane 11, so the 172 will get the G1000 variant, obviously, and the Cirrus Vision Jet, the SF50, will have the not so functional screens that are in there right now. Not a lot of things work in this plane right now. They will be replaced with that, which is more functional, obviously. And then, of course, it's open for third-party developers to drop either into the 2D panel or into the 3D panel as well. And I'm pretty sure many third-party developers will love to integrate that into their own planes. But as far as the default X-Plane is concerned, it's going to be a 172 and SF50. All right, here's our 12 DME coming up. The glide slope is about to hit the center. That all checks out pretty nicely. So this is going to jump over here and turn green in a second. There you go. And now we are on a coupled ILS approach. So, and at this point, I would obviously run my GUMPS check. Whoops, what was that? That was my charger. So I would check gas, not much. Undercarriage, well, it's always down. It's a 172 fixed gear. Mixture should probably go full rich at this point. Prop, it's fixed pitch, so don't care. Flaps, I will go first notch of flaps at this point in the approach, and switches, so I make sure all the lights are on. So that's the GUMPS check. And now I would fly the ILS down on flaps 1 all the way. and I'm actually not going to change to a higher flap setting on this one. Oops, that was too much throttle. I'm not going to change to a higher flap setting because we will just go missed. All right, and of course below 5,000 feet I need to bring the altimeter back to the actual altimeter setting. So I go out of standard baro and change to, I don't know, what did we set the weather to? I don't remember. We set the weather to, I thought I changed the pressure. I was pretty sure I did change. Well, set it to 85 now and see what happens. 2985. Did it actually do that? It didn't. I don't know. I like to. It's weird. No, it did it. Okay. So 2985, whatever that is in hectopascal, I have no idea. So here we are. 1011 hectopascal. What do you know? All right. So helpfully announcing that we are going from the final approach fix to the missed approach point. That's what that little FA and MA up here means. And of course, since we are flying a proper ILS approach, we don't have a thing such as a missed approach point. We have a decision altitude, and when that runs through and we don't see the runway, we just go missed. And of course I set our weather so that we will probably likely need to go missed. At this point in real life we would be switched over from the Langen radar controller to the Schwäbisch Hall Flugleiter and tell him we are like 6 miles out now, and he would make sure that there's no glider traffic and no ultralight traffic in our way now. Well, obviously no glider and ultralight traffic in hard IFR conditions like I've set in the simulator here. But when I actually did this flight to last weekend, yeah, last Sunday, exactly a week ago I did this. We had pretty nice weather actually, so that was quite important that while I was wearing the hood and flying heads down, obviously my examiner on the right seat was looking out for traffic. But yeah, you want to make sure that you don't run into any other GA traffic while you're flying your practice ILS approach. All right, we're about 1,000 above minimum now. And at minimum, we will obviously join the missed approach. And when we do that, we have to tell the GPS that we did, and we do that by bringing up the activate missed approach. It should actually be selectable right now. I'm not sure, but the easiest way to do this is obviously to use the suspend or unsuspend soft key of the GPS when we are in GPS mode. Let me just preset our heading, which we are going to fly on the missed approach. 500 to minimum. Not much to see out here. Not really. Ah, well, I can see a few trees. So, and as you can see here, there's the minimum pointer coming up on our altitude tape, which we preset earlier when we loaded the approach. I set the minimum reference, and that's what's coming up here. All right, let me turn off the autopilot at this point and hand fly. Whoops, that was a little too aggressive. And hand fly into the missed approach here. As you can see here, the blinking, the middle marker is coming up. I take a look outside. So actually I could land because we actually see the runway right now. I could go for a landing here, but I won't. So I bring up the power and initiate the missed approach right here. And what I do now, I think, yeah, and now the activate missed approach is available. So I go procedure, activate missed approach, enter. And that sets, as you can see here, the first leg of the missed approach active. I switch over from ILS navigation to GPS navigation, so magenta needles. And of course I should not stop climbing, obviously. So keep climbing, retract the flaps. Oh, that was the flap retraction. And climb back to 5,000. So I go into a level change mode and go back to GPS navigation mode, turn on the autopilot and bring the nose up. And now we climb on the published missed approach for 5.2 DME I think it was, and 4,000 on the altitude. So right now we're climbing out here and we want to be above 4,000 and behind 5.1 DME before we do the turn. And of course this is the proper DME we are looking for. By the way, fun fact, if you look at a Jeppesen chart instead of the AIP Germany chart here, it will actually give you the GPS distance from the runway here instead. So if you compare the Jeppesen chart to the AIP chart, you will see the number is different. You're like, what the fuck? Why is other charts different? And the explanation is that one uses the threshold, or the missed approach point rather, which coincides with the threshold, and the other one uses the DME to define exactly the same point, but the numbers will be different if you look at the charts. So we've crossed our 4,000, so we have about a mile left to go, and then we'll turn right. So here's our 5 DME coming up, and it's counting down to our right turn as it should. There you go, 5.2 DME, it'll start the turn. Oh, just about. That's close enough. Good. And we hit our missed approach altitude of 5,000 feet just about now. It's perfect. When I did that last week, I had a little bit more power at my disposal. I was flying that actually in a Cirrus instead of a 172, so I had a little bit more horsepower. So I hit the 5,000 a little earlier. Okay, let me bring down the power a little bit. Okay, and now we're obviously just heading back on our missed approach back to Dinkelsbühl, and I will we can then load our next approach, which is going to be the GPS approach. So let me yeah, that is our missed approach point where we are flying right now. And a good rule, no matter whether you are flying a G1000 or an Integra or whatever, when you change the approach you load, it is an extremely good idea to change the autopilot into heading mode while you are doing that. Because otherwise you're going to delete the missed approach that you are just on and replacing it with the missed approach of the approach you're now loading. So that's something to look out for no matter what kind of equipment you are flying. And this is actually an error in how I draw the map. It should, because this is a course to fixed leg 92 as it should be. That's exactly what the chart says. So it's intercepting the course to fixed leg exactly as it should. And this turn here is obviously very small for a 172 with a low ground speed, but the procedure is calculated for a plane flying 210 knots indicated, so it assumes a much wider turn when the procedure is actually designed and encoded. And then with the 172 we just have a lot smaller turn radius, which is why it took some time here to intercept that. Alright, I'm going to bring the autopilot into heading mode. Whoops, into heading mode instead. I have no idea what that does. I hope this this problem with the heading mode goes away when I emerge from Austin the next time. I really don't know what that is. We'll find it. We'll find it during the beta. Alright, let's change to a different approach now. We're going to fly the RNF-28 approach. And again, we're going to join the Dinkelsbühl VOR. Let's take a look at the chart. That's what the minimum is for this approach. So we are actually going to have EGNOS, as you can see here, which is the same, provides the same functionality as WAS does in the United States. So this is actually going to be an LPV approach. So if we fly with LPV accuracy, our minimum is going to be 1598. So call it 1600. So only 100 feet more than the ILS was, which is pretty impressive for what is technically still a non-precision approach. So I'm going to change the minimum now to 1600 and load the approach. And we're going direct Ingolsbühl now. All right, perfect. That's what we want. Now I can go back to GPS nav mode. And I want you to watch this indication here on the CDI. It'll tell us about the sensitivity of the CDI. So right now it's in term. That means terminal mode, which means a full deflection is 0.3 nautical miles, if I remember correctly. And as soon as we intercept the final approach course, that should change to whatever approach accuracy we have. So either LNAV for a regular non-WAS approach, or LPV for a WAS approach. And that should hopefully happen now, as soon as we intercept the final approach course. So the approach looks remarkably similar to the ILS approach in that it uses the same final approach fix as the ILS approach, the same missed approach point as the lock DME approach, and even the missed approach procedure is very similar. So this point is the same point that we used with the DME earlier. And of course, we have to pass both the DME and the 4000 altitude for the missed approach. So this leg is going to be a little shorter when we actually fly it. Doesn't extend quite as far out because we will actually be pretty darn close to 4,000 feet here already. So this leg moves in depending on your actual climb rate. Yeah, fun fact, Schwäbisch Hall is actually two airports right next to each other. The little glider and ultralight strip up here, and on the other side of the road, and there's a good Italian restaurant right between the airports. And on the other side of the road, the bigger airport, which, as I told you, was constructed mainly for the business jets of the Wirth company. So, yeah, if I came here in an ultralight, I would maybe choose the other Schwäbisch Hall airport. So technically, as you can see, they are two separate airports with two separate airport codes, and they are not actually connected. Well, I suppose you could probably pull your plane over the road here. Not quite sure if this is possible. So it's a pretty darn long published missed approach. We still have 6 miles to go till our approach starts. If you fly this in a Cirrus, everything happens a lot quicker. In the Cirrus, I think we were probably doing 140 here instead of 100, which speeds things up quite nicely. Well, that is the definition of IMC. That's actually the weather that I like most when flying with students, if it is actual conditions, because it takes so much workload off of me when we are flying in actual conditions and we are on an actual IFR flight plan, and the ATC is responsible for separation. If you're IFR with a student who is under the hood while you are flying in VMC, you have to play, or I have to play ATC for the student, look out, provide visual separation, because the student, of course, can't look out. So watching the student, ideally teaching him or her, and watching out for other planes, talking to ATC, VFR, and pretending to be IFR ATC to the student, that is about the most stressful kind of flight instruction there is. And if the weather is actually like this, if it's actual conditions, teaching becomes so much easier. All right, 1 mile to go to Dinkelsbühl, then right turn, 213, I think, on the heading, or 212 as it says here. So, right turn coming up, and here we go. And as you can see here, the autopilot is turning exactly as it should be, with a standard rate turn. So that little snake that extends here from your heading pointer, that is actually your turn rate indicator. So the big tick here is the standard rate turn, that little tick here is the half standard rate turn. And of course the autopilot is programmed to fly a standard rate turn, which it does. So it changes the bank angle depending on speed to give you the standard rate turn. That's exactly what it should do. So still 5,000 feet is the minimum altitude, which we can of course also see here on the flight plan, and it's still our minimum altitude to intercept the LPV glide path, which it should do. So as soon as ESUVA becomes active, we should get an LPV indication here, and it should actually show us our LPV glide path here. I hope that works. If it doesn't, that's something I need to look at before we go beta, obviously. Also, I probably need to move that text label a little bit. Text is floating out of the window right here. That doesn't look too pretty. I guess that needs to be moved just a tiny bit. Alright, turn to intercept final approach course coming up in 5 seconds. And that should, okay. It actually gives us only LNAV plus V. That's a little strange. Why is it only LNAV plus V? Should probably be LPV. Need to look into that. And that is actually the wrong color. That one should be magenta and not green, because green is for ILS. So that dot should actually be this color and not green. Okay, another thing for me to look at. I'm curious why. Let me pause that. I'm curious why this is not LPV. What am I running on right now? Fix nav. Curious. Do I have that open here? I actually do. What do you know? No, that's the default data. And the TY. Oh, okay. The LPV is here, but it's not loading it. Okay. That's definitely a problem I need to look at. Alright, approach mode is armed. And now we should write down the GPS glide path. So right now it's giving us the advisory VNAV. That's why it says LNAV plus V. And this is only the advisory V path. Hopefully as soon as we go beta, I'll have found out why it didn't load the LPV glide path. And then this would actually be the real LPV glide path. And we're going to pass Izuva, and what do you know, the autopilot indication is missing. Yeah, right. Because it's flying V path instead of GP, because that's the wrong one. Yep. And then this is why the indication is missing. Yeah. Okay. That's true. Okay, I get it. Yeah, right. So, well, this is pre-beta software. And that's what you get. That's what you get for running an X-plane that isn't in beta yet. Alright, so final approach fix. We actually need to slow it down a bit. Below 105 we can set the first notch of flaps, which I'm going to do, and about 6 miles out or so, and then run my final approach checklist. So 5,000 is also our missed approach altitude, so I don't need to change that. That is so weird. And the data ref is missing, obviously. Well, that is okay, that's not helpful. Okay. Yeah, we haven't exported the data as for 1110, so I also can't look at it. Oh, well. And now, of course, we are approaching critical fuel level, as it seems. So we have used 14.6 gallons of fuel while we since we started, and we have another 14.6 gallons left. So yeah, we used half of what we took off with currently. By the way, the fuel totalizer, it's a new thing in X-Plane. It's available via DataRefs as well. So if you want to make another instrument in a different panel with a fuel totalizer, you now have a DataRef for that. All right, how about the GUMPS check? So gas, we just looked, not terribly much. Mixture is still full rich, I think. Yep. Prop, don't have that. Flaps and switches. All right, so we got a little ballooning from the first notch of flaps. That's normal. All right, 80 knots, about 1500 to minimums. So I'm flying this right now as if it was an LPV approach, which I know it is and should be, if I find out why it's not doing this. So if that happened to you in the real plane, you are expecting LPV and you get LNAV plus V instead, what that means is that WAS is unavailable. So either your WAS receiver has failed, or the satellite has failed, or I don't know, there's cosmic rays or something like that. So for some reason you're not receiving the satellite signals from the WAS system. And if that happened to you in the real plane, obviously what you would need to do is fly the approach as an LNAV approach, which means those checkpoints here, so the 2.5 mile, 2,150 feet checkpoint becomes mandatory, and the minimum goes up from 1,600 to 1,750. So why not actually do that? Treat it like we would do in the real airplane. So if that would happen to me in the real airplane, I would know that I would need to check 2.5 here, 2150 on the altitude, and bring the minimum up to 1750, which we can actually do here in the references window. Bring it up to 1750 instead. And now we would be on a perfectly normal LNAV approach. So, yeah, and the 2.5 to 150, that was pretty accurate. All right, here's our minimum, our new LNAV minimum coming up. And I'm going to go visual here in a second. And then land the plane visually. So 100 to minimums. I'm going to turn off the autopilot as well and go visual. And yep, I can see a runway. Oh my god, we're lucky. I can actually see the runway in the fog there. All right, going visual. Turn off the flight director so I'm not distracted. And I'm going to stay at flaps 1 because I know this is a runway that is long enough for flaps 1. And here's our middle marker, obviously. and I can go with the visual glide path, precision approach path indicator. Obviously, I have 3 reds right now. I need a little more power. Alright, power goes to idle. And we'll hopefully touch down right here in the touchdown zone. Oh, bloop. Okay, not the best landing I've ever done, but here we go. Brakes. Alright, here we are. And the successful landing after the GPS approach. And now we can go. Oh, that looks actually pretty accurate. I think that's someone made a gateway airport apparently. That looks pretty much how it looks in the real world. So the GAT is right here, which is where I would go in and pay my landing fee. All right, that's about it. I have a few things to check, mainly why the LPV didn't kick in when it should have. I'm pretty sure there's a logical explanation for that as soon as I look at the code, and then fix the autopilot and glide slope indications accordingly. Alright, but we did the right thing. We encountered a failure, in this case a software failure. In real life it would have usually been a receiver failure, a failure of your WAS receiver. And we adjusted the minimums for it and the mandatory check altitudes, and that's exactly how you would deal with that situation in real life. Alright, that's about all I have to show about X-Plane 1110. There's a lot more to X-Plane 1110 than just my G1000. There's a lot of things Austin has done. There's a lot of things in the UI that Tyler has done. For example, those configurable joystick profiles, which are very cool if you fly lots of different aircraft. Ben and Sydney have done an amazing job on the OpenGL front. For example, they have completely eliminated the ground jitter that drove the helicopter pilots crazy. So helicopter pilots are going to love X-Plane 1110 as well. So it's a lot more in that release than just my G1000. All right, so that's about all I can show you today, and I hope we can go beta with X-Plane 1110 pretty soon now.